Hey everybody, we have a developer here that I'm super excited to sit down and talk to. This is Jeff Strain. He is the founder of Undead Labs, which you would probably know from the awesome game State of Decay.
Yeah, you're a huge fan.
I'm fine, thank you.
Aren't you?
I'm a big fan too, but I know that you are like absolutely all about State of Decay.
Yeah, it was a game that I discovered that I don't know what I was expecting, but it was what I felt like I always wanted from a post-apocalyptic undead world where, you know, you're just trying to stay alive, you're trying to build a base and go out and forage and hunt for things. What was the inspiration for State of Decay?
Well, I mean, yeah, I think you got very close to just nailing it, right? It was a passion project, right?
Mm-hmm.
We were a small team down in the heart of Seattle, and released it in 2013, and you know, lots of great zombie games.
Mm-hmm.
It's a crowded genre, it is. And whenever you announce a zombie game or a fantasy game or a World War II game, you know, the response you're going to get right off the bat is, do we really need another one of those? Yeah, right. Like, you know, I think there's this kind of expectation that, you know, we're all going to be doing some kind of fusion genres that nobody's ever heard of before. But these things resonate for a reason. And the zombie genre continues to be very popular. But what we felt was that even though there are some fantastic experiences in that genre, nobody really nailed the chemistry of what makes it enduring and the reason it stays popular. And that is because and I'll just speak for myself very personally here, although I think it reflects some of what you were just saying. It's about the survival fantasy. Mm-hmm. It's not about shooting zombies, right? It's about you being able to hang out with your friends and talk about what your plan would be. You know, do you take your Jeep and drive up into the mountains, or do you go to Costco and, you know, board up all the windows? Right. And we wanted to take a swing at bringing that experience to the table.
Well, and this is what I love, because the idea of the fortification, the idea of hunkering down and best planning out your survival, one of the biggest things that people walked away from the original State of Decay with was like, I want to do this online and I want to do it co-op.
Yes, that was from the day we released it. Mm-hmm. By far, the #1 requested feature that anybody who ever played the game had was, I want to be able to play this with my friends, right? And I want to be able to play it with people. And so that is kind of the beating heart of the sequel that we're here showing at the show today and tomorrow of State of Decay 2. But what's interesting is that, you know, it is not PvP. It is not kind of a swing at a massively multiplayer experience. It is exactly what players of the original were asking for. It's co-op multiplayer. I want to play with my friends. It is still profoundly a humans versus zombies game.
I think one of the things I loved about the zombie genre, even going back to cinema as well, is I was always a big fan of the Romero zombies, where it's a slow, methodical beatdown, and it's just this unrelenting enemy that's coming after you. In a weird way, it's almost like an environmental threat more so than an enemy.
Absolutely.
Yeah. And I think with State of Decay, you combine those because you also do have the other classes of zombies. The worst zombie in the history of zombie games, the feral zombie, which is just every time I see it, I get terrified.
There it is.
And so you have those, but I think you did a great job of mixing the two. I always said that what would kill somebody in a zombie apocalypse is their own impatience.
Yes.
It's like if you just keep your head up, you know, on a swivel and you're very careful, you can do it. And like even when you're in State of Decay, the first game, when I was looting, you had the option to loot faster, and it would make noise, and then you knew you were in huge trouble when
That's
you did.
right. Yeah. But I think the key there is that in our game, zombies are not threats on their own. They're not even threats in small groups, especially if you're fresh and you've got a character who's rested and ready to go, right? And it lulls you into this false sense of confidence that like, you guys are just butter, right? I don't have to worry about this. But over time, not only is your character becoming fatigued, those attacks are landing a little bit less frequently, it takes you a little longer to recover when you get hit, right? But also you as a player are developing this kind of rhythm and this confidence and this stride. And the combination of those two things after a while inevitably will nail you, right? Inevitably you will make a mistake and your character will die. And in State of Decay, that's it. It is a permadeath game. But as game designers, we understand that the #1 most important aspect of that is that you must always be able to look back and say, here's where I went wrong, right? You should never believe that the game screwed you, right? Or that you died because of some random thing that the game threw at you. Right? And so that's something that we're very kind of religious about trying to maintain in the experience.
I love those kinds of games where then your experience is so much different than your other friends who have played it. You know, even with the characters and everything, it's like you said, it's permadeath. Had a conversation with somebody in my office where we were talking about it, and I was talking about Marcus, my character that I was using primarily, and he's like, "Who's Marcus?" I'm like, "He's the main guy."
He's the
he's the main guy. It's like, "Oh, I don't know who you're talking about. He died like in mission 1." I was like, "What?"
Yeah. Well, I mean,
that's one of my favorite things too. These randomly generated characters that you get to pick from Go. You know,
Yeah.
so it's not like this is the character that I feel best represents me. I'm building the character that is me. It's you're given this small cast of characters, and you're like, okay, who can I do the best with?
Right, and we've really extended that. In State of Decay 2, you know, the procedurally generated characters are far deeper. You know, whereas the original had, you know, maybe 100 or 200 individual traits, we now have well over 1,000, and the combinatoric effects of those are staggering. And so everybody will have a community of very unique survivors.
Yeah, I want to talk about some of those because when I heard that you guys were expanding on those sort of traits of these characters, can you talk a little bit about the nature of that? I heard there's some of them have to do with some passive things like scavenging and things like that.
Yeah, well, you know, the game combines third-person action, very deep role-playing elements to, you know, character progression, the base building, and then the overall simulation. And so the traits that your survivors bring in when they come to your community all impact all of those systems. So, for example, you might have a character who was formerly a groundskeeper, and so she has some existing skills with gardening, and that's actually modeled in the game and winds up being a prerequisite for some of the facilities that you can build in your base, right? Another character may have, he was a set director, and so he has some kind of ability to kind of schedule people out and improve the labor that you have within your base. One character that we're showing here at the show snores, and at first you see that and you're like, oh, okay, so what? But it does matter. When you go in and look at all the things that are impacting your community's morale, you've got this -3 bonus to morale because Matt snores, right?
Really? Yeah.
And it's, you know, as with the real world, you have to take it all. You have to take the good with the bad.
Does that also make him like more tired faster because he's not sleeping as well? Does all that stuff kind of like factor in?
I don't know if that makes him more tired faster.
I want to talk about.
I'd be a little concerned, by the way, see what they would model the traits for YouTube host.
YouTube.
I don't know if those transition.
Too loud.
The question is, does that
Never
shirt increase or decrease the morale of your community?
It increases morale, but it also increases my visibility, which is an issue.
Okay.
I think that's going to be a problem.
That's right.
But I want to talk about this, how these traits and everything come together and how we're going to play together online, not just with the traits that our characters get, but with the traits that we have as players. If I'm somebody who loves to hang back and build a base and just fortify things, and that's what I love about the game, and Bernie's somebody who likes to get out there and like scavenge and shoot and like and destroy stuff.
Yeah.
Right.
How do we play together when we're online? How does that work?
Yeah, well, first let me just say that that's an interesting play style kind of proposition, because ultimately the combination of the survivors that you choose to bring into your community and the way that you choose to upgrade and modify and build out your base, those are what put the tools in your toolbox for your play style and how you want to survive. And I think that we would like it to be the case that your desire to hunker down and just build that infrastructure, and your desire to be, you know, out there kind of taking it to the enemy, both of those should be viable survival strategies, especially playing with each other, right? And so there is this very tight loop in the game of you need to go into the world, find building supplies, find seeds, find all of the kind of basic supplies that you need to survive. But you need to be using those not to just survive today and tomorrow, but to invest and build out infrastructure at your base. You know, if you are, you know, making all the decisions for how the base is built and what you want to be investing in, and that's going to be generating a list of needs. The example I just used, if you choose to build a farm and you have the expertise among your survivors to do that, you're going to need seeds. I need you to go into town and find me some seeds.
I'm on it.
Right? And be careful, because we can't afford to lose you. Everything in the game is a wager, right? You make a decision, you're wagering that the value of the outcome is greater than the cost you're going to pay. If he goes out there and winds up getting his butt kicked and either dies or comes back and has to be in the infirmary for a week, it may not have been worth pursuing that, right?
I love that. And I wanted to, you know, going back to the Ramiro movies and going back to these archetypes of characters that have to hunker down together and the way personalities clash as you go through. Is that something that you wanted to reflect mechanically online, or is that something where you just want to let me and Bernie and our actual personalities put each other at each other's throats 3 weeks down the line?
It's modeled a little more specifically than that. You know, the people in your community, the survivors that are part of your community, all have their traits and also their personality types. Some of them are more practical, some of them are more ethical. And when things happen, they're going to be giving you advice, and you're going to be having to make decisions as a player about who you agree with and which way you're going to pursue it. And you'll be making some of them happy, and you'll be making some of them unhappy. And unhappy people do things that make you unhappy, right? And so much as in the real world of managing a large disparate group of people, you're going to be always having to be mindful of not just morale in general, but also who's happy with you and who's not, and does that matter, right? Do I care if this person leaves or not?
I really loved the first game. I can't say that enough. It was the year that it came out. It was hotly contested for Game of the Year on our podcast. And when I played it, I really, really, really enjoyed the experience. But also, if I may, I had the feeling there was so much more potential, and it did feel like a small studio with a lot of ambition. Like, even on the map, there was a crashed plane that never figured into the storyline at all. How has the relationship with Microsoft affected Undead Labs? What is a team like now compared to the team that made the first game?
Yeah, well, I mean, you're absolutely right. Our reach slightly exceeded our grasp, right? We wanted to pioneer something new, bring a new play experience to the table, and so we swung for the fences with a team of 20, 22 people.
Wow.
Right. And I think we're all very proud of what we were able to pull off. But the nice thing about that is, that we now have a proof case that there's a large number, somewhere between 4 and 5 million fans out there who have played this game and loved it, and loved some of the chances we took. The chances we took with permadeath. This kind of not before. Hadn't been done before blend of third-person action and role-playing and simulation, right? And so now it's easy to point to it and say, hey, this works, people love it, let's take it to the next step. And we're very fortunate that Microsoft sees that potential as well. They've been a great publisher. They've stood behind us as we've grown the team, as we've taken on an even more ambitious sequel here. These games are hard to make. There's a lot of interacting systems, and it often falls very much outside of the traditional, particularly on console gaming experience, right? It is not a highly every pixel polished to perfection linear narrative where we have control over the whole environment. It's hard to demo here at E3. We're showing it behind closed doors, and we don't know what's going to happen often in this demo, and I have to prepare people for that because things can go off the rails and happen completely differently than we thought.
Yeah, those little random moments of magic and those little things where the systems interact in a way that you had never seen before.
Yeah.
Like you were saying, you really kind of laid a groundwork for things that are very common to us now. These online sandbox survive together kind of games. As you were watching this genre sort of grow and expand, especially on the PC, what were you looking at and you were like, oh yeah, that's good. Oh yeah, we should build on that. Oh yeah, these are the things that I really want to bring to the next one when we take this up to the next level again.
Yeah, well, I think it's easy to think of the game in terms of the mechanical aspects of it. The simulation in particular. What are the inputs into it? What are the outputs from it? How do we make that visible to the player? But ultimately, what glues people into the game is connection with characters, right? State of Decay 2 is very profoundly a character-driven game. We put a lot of work into giving them personalities and backgrounds and traits and integrating that in with the simulation. And where we hope to go with this is that you feel more and more like you're telling a story, right? That we give you the tools and the expressiveness within the world and the way the world reacts to your decisions to tell this story in your head. I'm a big fan of, and we're never supposed to talk about other games when we're here talking about our game, but I love XCOM, right? And one of the reasons I love XCOM is because you get these, at first, just random soldier with procedurally generated names, and they're just meat, right? You're just going to throw them in there. But after a while, something cool happens, or one of them survives for 3 or 4 missions, and all of a sudden this person is flowering in your mind, right? And you're starting to kind of hang some background on there that the game isn't really even
get your head cannon for your guy that got out of a tight spot.
That's right. Yeah. Give players just a little bit to hang on to, and they'll run with it and tell these amazing stories. That's really where we want to go with this, is let the game support the players telling these magnificent stories.
It's funny you say that, because the moment you mentioned the groundskeeper as a potential former career before the apocalypse, I got a post from one of our Twitter followers who's he wants the greenskeeper from Bill Murray from Caddyshack. So since he's so good with explosives, you mind a couple questions from Twitter?
No, not
There
at
seems
all.
to be one that everyone seems to be asking. It's been asked several times over and over again.
Okay.
People want to know about the size of the map. Can you say anything about the scale of this world from State of Decay 1 to 2?
Yeah. So right now, there are 3 maps in the game that are each roughly the size of the map in the first game.
Wow.
Yeah.
And that was not a small map.
No,
Yeah.
it wasn't. You know, it's interesting. You're always kind of you're trying to balance between the overall scale, how much of the world is there, versus the density. And yes, it's 3 times as large, but we also are really investing a lot to make sure that the amount of stuff that happens within each of those is both more diverse, and there's more of it as well, just in terms of the way the system's populated.
Does locating new bases, is that working the same way pretty much as in the first one?
Mechanically, it works the same way. We still elect structures that can be made to be bases, but you have a lot more granular control over how you build them out and what you actually do there.
Yeah, I could see some of that in your announcement trailer, if you can call it that. That it seemed like very modular, what you could do with your base.
Right, and those facilities and those bases play off each other a lot more. It's if you were putting it in strategy game terms, there'd be a deeper tech tree.
All right, and when can people get their hands on State of Decay 2?
Spring 2018.
Spring of 2018.
Yep.
Well, thanks for stopping by and see us. I'm obviously a huge fan of the game,
Yeah.
so Anthony.
Super excited. Thank you so much, Jeff.
Yep, appreciate the opportunity. Take care. Have a good